So I've been gone a while, and I know I promised I'd be back but I took another break, and the reason why is because I had exams until about June, and I sort of waited till my results came back to start posting again, because we still actually had uni, and we did have like a little project in June as well. So I was wondering what I could post now that I'm back on YouTube, and I think a good video would be to actually explain what exams are like in medical school. And at least for the first video, I'm going to talk about what second year medical school exams are and how they work at Imperial. They're slightly different to GCSEs, so hopefully this will be an interesting video to those of you who kind of want to know more about exams, which hopefully should be interesting for you. Well, if you don't know who I am, I'm Akshi. I'm a second year medical student, going into my third year now at Imperial College London. And like I said, I've just come off exam season, which I'm not sad to see go by, because exams are difficult and they are really boring and probably one of my least favourite times of the year, but they are certainly very different to school and certainly different to like GCSEs and AS levels and A levels. So at Imperial, I'm going to run through what they are in your second year. And they have a pretty similar system in first year, but I'll talk about second year because I've just done those, and they might be changing in first year based on year-to-year discrepancies. So let's talk a little bit about what exams I had to sit. So in first year and second year, you've got a set of exams. Now these exams typically will occur at the end of the year and also throughout the year. So you've got some exams which are pass-fail, and some exams which contribute to your overall end of year mark. Now before we get into any of this, we need to clarify one thing. Medicine is an unclassified degree. What that means is it isn't classified into your first, 2-1, 2-2 and third and fail. Medicine is a pass-fail degree. It always has been and it probably always will be, which means that you don't fall into those categories. You obviously pass or you fail. Now at Imperial, you can also be eligible for honours, so these are awards, and if you have ever done a musical exam like an ABRSM piano exam or a Trinity saxophone or trombone exam, you'll know that you can get merits and distinctions. And Imperial, in our first 2 years at least, and also down the line, you get merits, distinctions, and what are called distinction stars. So merits are awarded to the top 30% of the cohort, distinctions to the top 20% of the cohort, and distinction stars to the top 10% of the cohort. Now, you can also get various other awards for doing really well in particular exams, or I think it's being in the top 3 for your overall grade in the entire year. But these awards aren't really that vital. They don't matter at all, actually, and the college actively encourage you not to worry about them. They're just purely there to reward those people who have done well. If you don't get them, nothing's going to happen. You pass, that's the most important thing at medical school, and it really is most important that you pass and not worry about getting into the top 10% of the year. Now, more about the exams. We've got some exams, first of all, like I said, that are purely pass-fail. And now in year 2, these are PCH and CPA. Now PCH and CPA were the two main exams that I'm going to talk about that were pass-fail, and there may have been a variety of others, but the main two were these two. PCH stands for Patients, Communities and Healthcare, and essentially what PCH is it is a exam that essentially is very easy to pass. It's not even an exam, it's essentially just a set of guidelines that outline your behaviour on placement. And what this means is that your CPA is marked through a set of forms that your consultant normally fills out, and these just say that you've attended every day, you've done the things that you need to do, and you've also done anything else that the consultants have asked you to do. And it's essentially just, if you turn up, you pass. And you obviously do everything that's required of you. It's very difficult to fail this unless you obviously don't turn up to your placement, or don't do something that your consultant asks, or you don't do some of the pre-required things. Now in year 2, these are things like conducting an ECG, taking a blood glucose, taking a venipuncture. These are some of the things that you have to do on placement. And normally actually on placement you have allocated sessions for these things, so even if you're at different hospitals, every single person will definitely have one chance to do this. So there's no real excuse not to pass this, unless you obviously forget to fill your form in, which is an unfortunate circumstance. But apart from that, it's very easy to pass this, and it's pass-fail. Now your second thing, your CPA, I've forgotten the actual full name for it, which I'll put here, but your CPA is essentially a mini OSCE. Now, the term OSCE might be familiar to those of you who are going into medical school, because it is an exam that most people sit in their third year and proceed to continue with, which tests your ability as a clinician. And this means that you're tested on a variety of specialties in a very similar format to an MMI circuit, where there'll be about 12 stations in OSCE. In our CPA, there are about 7. And each station will test you on a different capacity. So they're normally about 4 different specialty associated stations. So, for example, gastro, cardio, neuro, euro, something like that, resp, whatever. And each station will ask you to do a full examination on a patient, so a full cardiovascular examination. Then you'll have some communications assessments, which are like taking a patient history, explaining bad news to a patient, explaining a procedure to a patient, and you might have some other basic skills like suturing. Now in year 2 at Imperial, we have the CPA. It's university specific, so a lot of universities don't do this in year 2, and it's really good that Imperial did this because you get a lot of experience before you do your year 3. In year 2, it's a really dialed down version of the OSCE. So there are only 7 stations. There's a neuro station, a cardio station, a resp station, a gastro station, MSK station, there's a history taking station, and then there's an OB station, which is things like SBAR and News 2. Essentially, when you go to a hospital ward for the first time, a person will come around and take your blood pressure, they'll take your heart rate, they'll take your resp rate, that's your OB station. And you don't have to do an examination either on any of these stations. What will happen instead is the examiner will ask you to perform a particular activity. So on the respiratory station, they might ask you to take the respiratory rate. Or on the MSK station, they might ask you to test the anterior draw test. Or on the neuro test, they might ask you to test for the biceps reflex, etc. And it's very dialed down, but you do have to learn all of these things. It's just that you don't have to perform them all, you don't have to memorize every single one. As long as you know how to do them, having been prompted by the examiner, you'll pass this very easily. And again, it's a test where you can pass. It's an exam where you very easily can pass because of the nature of it. It's not too difficult, it's more as a foundation. And it's pass-fail. Now you do get a percentage. The way you pass this is you have to have an overall pass mark. So there are 3 different days on which the CPA can occur. Each day is a different pass mark. Now you have to pass the overall pass mark, which is an average of your 7 stations. And you also have to pass a minimum of 4 stations. So you can do horribly, you can get 10% in 1 station. As long as you pass 4 others and pass the overall pass mark, which is around 60 to 65%, you're absolutely okay, you can pass. And this tends to be the same in the OSCEs as well. You don't have to pass every single station, you can fail 1 station, it's absolutely fine. As long as you pass 4 of them, you're all good. Now, the CPA, like I said, you get a percentage, and this percentage doesn't contribute to your end of year grade. It's instead just used as a marker of whether you've passed or not, and you get a pass-fail grade again. Simple enough. Now those are your pass-fail exams. Now at Imperial, you have 5 other main exams. One's worth 20%, one's worth 20%, another one's worth 20%, one's worth 30%, and then one's worth 10%. So 3 20%ers, 1 10%er, and 1 30%er. So let's start from the 10%er, anatomy. Now your anatomy exam is the least important, I say with tentativeness, because it is quite important still, but it is technically weighted the least. And the reason why is because, to be honest, it tests the least knowledge. It's only 50 questions, it's an hour exam, your shortest exam, and essentially it's a spotter exam. What that means is they give you an image for every question, they point to a particular structure and ask you what nerve innervates this structure, what is this structure, what artery supplies this structure, etc. Some variation of that. And again, you get a percentage for this, you have to pass this. The pass mark for our year was quite low, it was about 40%. The main reason is because we had closed book exams for the first time in a while, and they also switched after COVID to more application questions as opposed to knowledge-based questions. And seeing as it was also now closed book, they decided to lower the exam mark, which reflected the difficulty exam. It was quite hard, so a 40% pass mark is quite suitable. Now, the next exam is your BRS exam. Your BRS exam stands for your Bioregulatory Systems exam, and it tests you on all your core medicine, so your pathophysiology, anatomy, pharmacology, everything, even your treatment, diagnosis, everything that is medicine based is tested in this BRS exam. It's a big exam. It's 180 marks. It's 3 hours. It is your big exam. Now, it is split into 3 different sections. Your SBA, so single best answer, which is essentially multiple choice, but there's only one right answer. Your VSAQ, very short answer questions, which are essentially written answers, but it's maximum 4 words as the answer, and these are each about 36 marks or 32 marks, around that region. And then you've got your SAQ, which are your short answer questions. Now these are your, essentially I like to think of them as essay answer questions, but they're not essays. You're meant to write like 1 to 2 sentences based on how many marks the question is, and that's about 90 marks. So essentially with these papers, they are quite big, and it means that they weigh quite a lot. So this is 30% of your grade, so it's the biggest exam that you'll sit. Now, the pass grade for this was also about 43% for the same reasons as I mentioned for anatomy, closed book and application style. And it's again quite a hard exam, but because it's actually worth so many marks, it means that unlike anatomy, making a couple of errors here and there don't actually make a big effect in this exam. The only problem is they can build up over 180 marks. But with anatomy, the odd mistake here and there costs you already like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10%. So it's good and bad to each exam. Your remaining 3 exams are CSI, LMAP, CRI. Now, LMAP is your final exam that you sit in exam week. So, exam week is made up of anatomy, BRS, CPA, and LMAP. LMAP is the final written exam you do in one sitting on the closed book exams, sort of, and that's it. And LMAP stands for Lifestyle Medicine and Prevention. Essentially what it is it's a lifestyle medicine exam testing your knowledge on basically stuff like the World Health Organization, stuff like epidemiology, things like sleep, and more generalized medicine. Applied to the wider world. Now this year, we had closed book exams, but the nature of LMAP is that it doesn't test your memorization technique, instead it tests whether you can apply knowledge to real world scenarios. And thus, they let us take 20 sheets of notes into this exam. Sounds like a lot, it's actually not quite a lot if you think about it, because printing stuff out, as I realised the night before the exam, can be a pain if you haven't got the right sizing. So it's not actually that easy to take notes into the exam. Now, it's double-sided, you can do whatever you want on it. I chose to type it out and print it out. To be honest, in the exam, you tend to look at the notes a fair bit, but not as much as you'd believe to. And this LMAP exam is, I want to say, the easiest exam, but I again hesitate to say that because it is very difficult if you don't revise for it. For me, LMAP clicked the most out of all my exams. And I just naturally found it easier than the rest of them, certainly easier than BRS Anatomy, and I think the rest of our year found that as well, just because with LMAP it's a lot easier to prepare for, you know what's going to come up, and as long as you put the work in, you'll do fine on this exam. It's worth 20% of your grade. It's one of those exams where if you put the work in, it's really easy, if you don't, it's going to be the hardest exam you sit. So yeah, that's LMAP. Now those are all the exams that you sit in exam week, so that's BRS, Anatomy, LMAP, and CPA. CPA doesn't count for anything. LMAP counts for 20%, BRS 30, Anatomy 10. That's 60%. So where does the remaining 40% of your grade come from? 2 remaining exams/projects. One being CSI. Now let's talk about this first. CSI is Clinical Science Integration. What this is a series of tests across your year, about, I think it's like 6 to 8 tests across the first 2 terms. And you get an average out of all of your scores. Now, each test will test you essentially on 2 diseases or conditions or presentations. So it could be hypothyroidism and type 2 diabetes. And you get taught these in sessions, and you get taught these in more detail. So as opposed to in year 2 where you mainly learn concepts about diseases, in CSI you learn about diagnosing, treatment, pharmacology of the medications, very much like year 3. And that's why it's called Clinical Scientific Integration. It's very clinical, but it also tests you on science. Now, these were open book because these were remote exams, and the way these work are you have about 20 questions, I think. These 20 questions you sit on your own in half an hour. You then are moved to a Zoom breakout room with your tutor group, where you sit these 20 questions again. The premise of this being that you'll all have different answers, and you discuss and come up with a final answer which should be correct. If not, you keep going until you get the right answer. Now, you also have what is called a T-app, And this TAP essentially is a separate exam that you'll sit at the end of the term. Now this will test 4 conditions, so you'll have 2 tests, one for 2 conditions, another for 2 conditions, and then you'll finally have this big exam at the end, which is open book and is a full team exam. And this is either going to be an essay, or a series of questions, or a poster setting exercise, and you do this as a group. It's about one of the conditions that you've learned, and this is again worth a decent amount for the mark. Now, this is all running across the year, so in total you've got 6 exams across the year for this, and a point system is allocated to this, and you'll get a percentage at the end. You can track your percentage scores across the year. They're normally updated every term or every half term, and you get an average for this. This average is then weighted for 20% of your overall end of year grade. Now that's done. Now that's the final exam that you sit in medical school. Now it sounds like a lot, but it's not actually a lot, because CSI, like I said, is across the year. By the end of your second term it's done, and then you've only got about 3 to 4 exams in exam week, which is not bad comparatively to your GCSEs and A-levels. Now your final exam is CRI. This is Clinical Research and Innovation, and this is a project that you sit in your 3rd term. So once exams are done and you're all undergoing PTSD, the college have given you a project to do. Now you can apply in groups, or you can apply on your own, in which case you'll be allocated to a random group, and you get sent away to an experience. I got sent away to a lab-based experience, but you can be sent to the Imperial College campus to learn about sleep and stuff like that, or you can be sent to like hospitals and do more clinical work. But I did a lab-based assignment, and I applied as a group with a group of friends, and you do this placement for about 3 weeks. You essentially get all your data, do your experiments, get your write-ups done, and then you've got about a week to create your poster. This poster is a scientific poster, which you will then present to 2 examiners, and you are graded on your presentation, your poster appearance, and also 10% of that project is graded on your peer assessment. So each one of you will grade each other in your group on how you performed. I had a really great group. We all turned up, we put in great work. I was very happy with the people I was working with, so obviously I gave them all full marks on that. But it's entirely up to you. It just means that if you had someone who didn't contribute, you can allow that to be reflected in the final grade. And that is worth 20%. So finally, what do we have? We have BRS 30%, Anatomy 10%, LMAP 20%, CSI 20%, CRI 20%, PCH pass-fail, and CPA pass-fail. And that is essentially a breakdown of your second year medical school exams at Imperial College. So the final thing to say is how these work. Now, failing exams is perfectly normal, and in fact I would say it's rare for everyone to pass. People will fail. The way Imperial works is that if you fail first time, you're allowed a resit. If you then fail a resit, typically you are allowed to retake the year if you have mitigating circumstances. If you don't have mitigating circumstances, I believe people do retake the year. I would go and check the Imperial website if you want a certain answer to this. I'm just going off of what I've heard. But if you don't, you can be asked to leave medical school, which sounds daunting, but it's very rare that that happens. Most people end up retaking the year, or most people, to be honest, pass their resits, because if you think about it, you'll have about a month to revise for a couple of exams, which is more than enough time that you need to. Now, with these exams, the way Imperial puts a pass mark is, it's slightly different to other universities in the sense that Imperial have a pass mark set before anyone sits the exam, and this is based on how hard they think the exam is, which means that either everyone can fail or everyone can pass. So it's not based on how the year does as a whole, it's based before they sit it. And it's a sort of strange way of looking at it, but it does take away from maybe the whole year didn't prepare, in which case pass mark would unfairly be low, or the whole year prepared really well, which can skew the pass mark really high unfairly. This way it means that it's objectively set based on how hard the exam is, so even if everyone prepares really well and gets like 90%, they can still all pass, and it'll reflect the fact that the whole year just did really well. So that's how Imperial works, that's how our exams work. If you want to hear more about my experiences, how I did in my exams, what I felt on exam day, I have recorded the whole thing, so if you want to hear it, you can let me know in the comments. If you've got any questions about Imperial exams, do let me know. First port of call should be check out the Imperial College website. All the questions you ask me can be answered on there. I'll put the link down below as well. Go and have a fish about on there. And yeah, hopefully it helped. Hopefully it's an interesting video, slightly different, and I'm waffling now. I'm going to say bye. I'll catch you all in the next video. See you in a bit.